Okay, so we're starting very late, but we're here. That's what matters, right? We're here, and we're doing Esther. We've been looking forward to this. We're done with Isaiah. Okay, if you missed it, I'm sorry. And so we're doing Esther, and hopefully we'll be able to get through 4 chapters tonight. But the name Esther actually means something hidden. So there's a lot of things that we're going to draw out of this book. I just think it's a cool little coincidence, or maybe not a coincidence, that there's a lot of hidden meaning and a lot of hidden things in this book. And just like, okay, so Romans 15:4 says, "For whatever things were written before were written for our learning, that we through the patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope." So everything that was written before is written for our learning. One of the interesting things about this book is that there's no mention of God at all in the book, and there's no mention of prayer. So there is one, there's been a couple of people throughout the years that have, kind of stated a case for they didn't think it should be in the canon. They do fast. Yes, they have.
Is that not considered prayer?
Well, no, you're right. That when she asked for prayer and fasting, there's just no a recording of it, recorded prayer of it. Yeah. So, but there's a lot of things to be found out and learned. There's a lot of things that are in the pattern of these stories. And so that's what, there's all kinds of things in the pattern of learning. The Abraham, being asked to sacrifice Isaac, Noah being asked to do the ark, Jonah's being 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale. All of those things they have meaning. They have prophetic meaning. I was looking at you and I almost said they're pregnant with meaning. Like my brain just does that. Sorry. It's terrible. She's pregnant. She's pregnant for those who don't know online. Anyway. Okay, so what? Anyway.
Everyone watching online, strangers.
She never said a name or anything. She just said she. Who is she?
Y'all quit. Everyone's just laughing at my expense tonight, is what I feel. Anyway, but one of the things that we're going to talk about as we go is we introduce Esther. Okay, so we're going to get maybe about halfway through the story, possibly, a good maybe third way through the story. But one of the things about this is that the Lord is playing the long game. He sees things through history that we don't see. And he's setting up things for the future that we don't know about. So these are one of the things that we can learn by going backwards into these histories and seeing what came forward from these things. So all that to say, let's talk just for a second about who the Amalekites are, because it's going to pertain to this story. If you guys were here during Genesis, or if anybody knows about this during Genesis, the Amalekites, when Moses was leading the Hebrew people out of Egypt, the Amalekites actually attacked them, and instead of giving them passage through, they actually attacked them. And so they were forever established as the enemy of the Hebrew people. So Exodus 17:14 says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, write this for a memorial in the book and recount it in the hearing of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." Remember that name, Amalek. "And Moses built an altar and called its name, 'The Lord is my banner.' For he said, because the Lord has sworn, the Lord will have war on Amalek from generation to generation." So this is a promise that the Lord establishes from the beginning. He says, from this day forward, Amalek, I am forever at war with Amalek. Okay, and the Amalekites. So Amalek is the name of one of the 4 fathers of the demigods, basically a Nephilim. Amalek was one of the Nephilim of times past in the book of Genesis, it actually, in the Greek actually translates it as titans. Okay, so he was one of them. So throughout the Old Testament, I'm not going to go through all that history tonight because we don't have time, but throughout the Old Testament, there are certain tribes that Satan uses to infiltrate the promised land. And the Lord, when Joshua was the one who ends up going into the land. And so the Lord commands them to expel the evil from the land. As they're going in, he commands them to dispossess the land of his enemies, and the Amalekites being one of them. Now, there's generally 7 tribes. So this is why people don't understand generally why God seems like I don't understand why he commands the slaughter of whole tribes of people. Well, you have to go back and understand why. There's a reason why. It was actually technically a demonic bloodline, and they actually did practice very, very dark forms of witchcraft, including like human sacrifice and such things. So he commanded them to blot them, to get them out of the land altogether. So that is kind of the backdrop. Now, from Amalek, we're gonna have basically a villain and 2 kind of heroes that are going to come forward in the story. The main villain is Haman, and Haman is descended from the Amalekites. So that's why I'm painting this backstory. You have to sort of have to know the history in order for this to make sense, okay? So the story is actual history that took place in the Persian period between 539 and 331 BC, after many Jews had returned from exile to Palestine to rebuild the temple. So I put a little chart in here. You have Cyrus the Great. Now, if you guys were here for Isaiah, Cyrus the Great was the one who is prophesied by name. The Lord established him to come and make the decree to free the Jews from Babylon. So his grandson, Cyrus is the great grandson, ends up being the king in this story. And the king is Ahasuerus, he's also called Xerxes. Xerxes is actually a title. So it kind of goes back and forth, but that's the same guy. When we're in this story, throughout this book, Xerxes, Ahasuerus, same guy. Xerxes is basically a title, but he's the grandson of Cyrus the Great that was prophesied by name. So we're in that time period. Are y'all kind of tracking? I put that map in here just to kind of give you a place where it is. Esther happens, the story happens in about the middle of Ezra, before Nehemiah, okay? So let's just start, and if I need to backtrack, I will. Esther chapter 1, verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus this was the Ahasuerus who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the citadel. And by the way, Taylor, I think I accidentally discovered how to resize these, but I didn't do it for this one. It was like an accident. Anyway. All right. Now, that's just a map to kind of tell you where this is in reference from Jerusalem to Shushan, which is also Susa. Okay? Verse 3, in the 3rd year of his reign, sorry, y'all. In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast for all his officials and servants. The powers of Persia... Sorry. Pause. The powers of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of the provinces being before them, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty, for many days, 180 days in all. And when these days were completed, the king made a feast lasting 7 days for the people who were present in Shushan the citadel, from great to small, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. Now, these were famous feasts. This one lasted 6 months, a feast that lasted 6 months. Now, the reason for that was that these were basically planning sessions for war. So he would invite dignitaries, governors, rulers from around the place, and he would, they would drink and party and socialize. And while they're there, there's a socialization that's happening, but they're making plans for war. So this king, Xerxes, is constantly trying to expand his kingdom. And remember, if you know kind of that timeline of the world powers, I'm not going to go over them tonight, but after the Persians come the Greeks. So he is constantly trying to go to battle with the Greeks. Okay, so that's a lot of these planning sessions. So Dulafoy was a guy who was a Frenchman. This is my notes. Excavated the ruins of this palace. So this very palace was excavated. The ruins were excavated between 1884 and 1886, where one of the dice, which are called pur, I don't know how to say that right, but pur, which is where we get the name Purim, is from the dice, was used to cast lots. So this guy actually uncovered one of the dice that they used to cast lots. Xerxes threw famous drinking parties where alliances were made along with battle plans. He had an irrational temper, occasionally exhibiting fits of rage. This was noted by historians that he once took a strap and beat the ocean waves in a rage. The pillared halls in Susan could accommodate hundreds, if not thousands, of dignitaries. The presence of such people preparing for the Grecian battles, was witnessed by Herodotus, who's known as the father of history. The details in this story imply an eyewitness account. All right, so that's all of that background is for a reason. Verse 6, there were white and blue linen curtains fastened with cords of fine linen and purple on silver rods of marble pillars. And on the couches were of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of alabaster, turquoise, and white and black marble. And they served drinks in golden vessels, each vessel being different from one another, with royal wine in abundance, according to the generosity of the king. In accordance with the law, the drinking was not compulsory, for the king had ordered all the officials of his household they should do according to each man's pleasure. Okay, you get the picture? That was for two reasons. You get all of those details, imply an eyewitness account. These were things that are well documented in actual history. This story is not a fable. This is a documented historical account. That's what I'm trying to say, okay? Now, Queen Vashti, who was his queen, obviously, also made a feast for the women in the royal palace, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. Now, the name Vashti means beautiful or beautiful woman. The women always dined in a separate area. That was just their culture, except when they were dining in their private homes. That was just a cultural thing. So the banquet for the women was in a separate area. So lay in the background. There 6 months of just wild drinking parties, and this king who was known to be kind of irrational and have fits of rage. And then he's got a beautiful queen, and she's having her own party over in another area with the women, okay? On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Meherban, Biztha, Harbana, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zether, and Carcass, 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king wearing her royal crown in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. Okay, so I put this one, we don't know, y'all. Some people have made like plays and, plays and movies and stuff about this story. So I just picked one that I thought was kind of cool, which one she might have looked like, and of course it's in black and white. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command brought by his eunuchs. Therefore, the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. Now, I have heard so many sermons that really kind of paint her in a bad light, that kind of, diss her a little bit for being disobedient and for being so arrogant that she wouldn't come at his request. But think about this. They've been drinking for months, and he wanted to bring her out just to parade her in front of a bunch of drunken men so that they could all gaze on her beauty. And she said no. I really feel like she's gotten a bad rap in all of this. And you also have the backstory of this guy was, not always nice. He was kind of, he was irrational, had fits of rage. She was probably a little fed up with him. And so she just said no, So I personally don't want to give her too much of a hard time about that. But it did serve to play out for the history that God had in mind. Okay? 12, but Queen Vashti refused to come in the king's command brought by his eunuchs. Therefore, the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. Then the king said to the wise men who understood the times, for this was the king's manner toward all who knew law and justice, the closest to him being Karshena, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Mermucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who had access to the king's presence and who ranked highest in the kingdom. What shall we do to Queen Vashti according to the law, because she did not obey the command of the king Ahasuerus, who brought to her by the eunuchs? And I know, because I'm probably not saying it. I'm probably not saying it right. Ahasuerus. I know.
I've never heard this term.
I know. Xerxes. You want me to just start saying Xerxes? And Mermucan answered before the king, the princess, Queen Vashti has not only wronged the king, but also the princes and all the people who are all in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will become known to all women, so they will despise their husbands in their eyes when they report, King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she did not come. This very day, the noble ladies of Persia and Media will say to the king's officials that they have heard of the behavior of the queen. Thus, there will be excessive contempt and wrath. If it pleases the king, let a royal decree go out from him. Let it be recorded in the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it will not be altered, that Vashti shall come no more before King Ahasuerus, that the king will give her royal position to another who is better than she. When the king's decree, which he will make, is proclaimed throughout all his empire, for it is great, all wives will honor their husbands, both great and small. So a couple of things here. One is, you'll take notice at the beginning of the story that this king, for some reason, doesn't seem to make a lot of his own decisions. It seems like he's always, asking the advice of his advisors, which is a good idea, but he never seems to have his own mind about these things. Like, what do y'all think we should do? And he's kind of, does whatever they say. That's as far as story is recorded anyway. So he seems to have a little bit of a people pleaser syndrome when it comes to that, But the other thing that is going to play into this story is the fact that Persian law, and we saw this in the book of Daniel also, Persian law, once it was written, could not be altered. So for him to make a decree that Vashti could no longer appear before him ever meant that law could never be changed. Now, they could make other laws that would kind of, like addendums, they could add to and make addendums to things, but they couldn't change the law. Once it was written, that was it. It was gospel truth at that point.
Also, I double-checked myself before I spoke. Xerxes is Persian, so whatever is Hebrew. So since that's just written in Hebrew, they kept the Hebrew name instead of translating it to Xerxes.
Makes sense. Okay. And the reply pleased the king and the princess, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. Then he sent letters to all the king provinces, to each province in its own script, to every people in their own language, that each man should be master in his own house and speak the language of his own people, and in the language of his own people. So you get, that's the chapter 1 that gives you the backstory of kind of what happened. So Vashti is basically, she's not like killed or anything like that, but she's deposed from being queen, and she is sent away into another area because these were huge, expansive living areas that they had, basically. So these were huge, expansive living areas. So the women will see that they had there was a living area for the virgins in preparation for the king. There's another living area that was for concubines, and a whole other one that was for wives, and then you have the queen. So we have different areas that they go to. I'm not sure which one Vashti went to at that point, but she was no longer the queen. Okay. That's chapter 1. Are y'all following me? I feel like it's boring at this point. Are y'all good?
Yeah, we're good.
No, I cannot start over. Shut up. Okay, sorry. It's just history that's kind of important for the story.
It's just been a series of events.
Okay.
I'm with you.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're with me. All right, now that's chapter 1. Between the events of chapters 1 and 2, there's about 4 years that pass. Okay, so he's gotten rid of Vashti, and 4 years pass before they go do anything else. During that time period, they're going to battle. He's busy. They're in war. Okay. During which time Xerxes went on a disastrous campaign against the Greeks to avenge the loss of his father, and also in an attempt to expand his kingdom. It is said that he went out. Now, this is what's written in history. Some people, take issue with this, but you can believe it or not. It is said that he went out with 2 million soldiers and only 5,000 returned. The famed Battle of Thermopylae, where the Spartans held off the Persians long enough for most of them to escape, occurred. Okay, this is part of that history. It was after this disastrous return that Esther was made queen. So you guys have seen, well, actually I haven't even seen the movie. There's a lot of movies I haven't seen. The Spartans, 300, all that stuff. That's part of this history, this part of this time period. So this is, now the Persians win, but they're losing a lot of men. The Persians at this point in history, they have a lot more show. A lot of these men are just more for show than they have like really trained soldiers. So the Greek kingdom is starting to form. It's starting to come up in ranks. And once Alexander the Great comes on the scene, then he's going to wipe them out. Okay. All right. Chapter 2. Now, the reason I said all that was to give you the feeling of the case that he's come back after getting his butt kind of whooped, even though they won. It's kind of an embarrassment. He lost a lot of soldiers, and he comes back, and now, men, one of the things that wives are good for is for moral support, that intimacy, that time of moral support of building up your husband. Well, he doesn't have a wife. He comes home and he decides that he's like sorry at this point that he did what he did to Vashti, but the law can't be changed. Okay.
So he doesn't have like concubines.
Yes, he has concubines. He's got a lot of them, but that's not the same. And I guess, it's like,
that's rich.
I guess it's not the same. I don't know.
It's not.
They don't give more.
No, it's not. Exactly. Goes to show.
All I think of is Mulan when the three soldiers are like,
Mulan. Sorry, a concubine is sort of like a second wife. They don't have a mistress. Yeah, a mistress. I forget that people don't know some of these biblical names.
No.
Right.
They're only used for one purpose, otherwise they would be a second wife.
Absolutely.
Actually,
fun fact, in the time of the Persians, most of them weren't even used for that because you ruled over so many lands. The people who were actually governing were giving their daughters to form peace treaties. So it's actually a whole lot less about the Lady of the Night and more of a political move. So
As a
take
concubine and not a wife?
So they can
Yeah.
just be there.
That's crazy.
I do know a lot of it was just politics.
Yeah.
The
It was
wives
like
and the concubines
99%
is just
politics.
politics. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so that's the background.
And that's
Okay,
the background of
That-
concubines as a whole.
that's the background. So Xerxes comes home from this battle, supposedly with only 5,000 soldiers. But you can believe what you want. Okay, chapter 2. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus had subsided, the wrath because of all the former things, okay, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what had been decreed against her. Basically, he kind of missed her at this point. Then the king's servants who attended him said, "Let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins to Shushan, to the citadel, into the women's quarters, under the custody of Haggai, the king's eunuch, custodian of the women. And let beauty preparations be given them. Let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti." This thing pleased the king, and he did so.
Sure did.
In Shushan, the citadel, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who had been captured with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had taken away. Now, let me explain who Mordecai is. Okay, these things are going to be important. So pause for just a second. Hold that scene in your mind. Who is Mordecai?
Wrong.
Well, it's actually her. It's actually her cousin. It's actually her older cousin. Okay, so Mordecai. I'll just bottom line it and then I'll explain it. Mordecai was descendant of a guy named Shimei. Back when in the book of 2 Samuel, when David was king, you guys remember, if you know the story, when there was a revolt of, y'all help me, Absalom. When Absalom revolted and David had to leave Jerusalem for a time, as he's leaving with his troops, there was a guy named Shimei who was throwing stones at David, okay? So here I put in this little excerpt from 2 Samuel 16. Now, when King David came to Bahurim, there is a man from the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera, coming from there. He came out, cursing continuously as he came, and he threw stones at David and at all the servants of King David. And all the people and the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. And also Shimei said thus when he cursed, come out, you bloodthirsty man, you rogue. The Lord has brought upon you the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned, and the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom your son. So now you're caught in your own evil, because you are bloodthirsty. You're a bloodthirsty man." Then Abishai the son of Zeruiah said to the king, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Please let me go over and take off his head." But the king said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord has said to him, curse David. Who then shall say, why have you done so?" And David said to Abishai and his servants, "See how my son, who came from my own body, seeks my life. How much more now this Benjamite? Let him alone and let him curse. For so the Lord has ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will repay me with good for all his cursing this day." And as David and his men went along the road, Shimei went along the hillside opposite him and cursed him as he went, and threw stones at him and kicked up dust. So David spared Shimei out of mercy. Okay, now Shimei was from the house of Saul, and Saul was a Benjamite. Mordecai, also a Benjamite. Okay. Mordecai, here's the lineage. I put the little chart in here in case it's like, I'm very visual. I like these. So you have Mordecai, you have Kish, Shimei, Jair, Mordecai. Okay. So Mordecai is descendant from this guy who was spared out of mercy. And had David not spared his life that day, Mordecai would have never been born. You get where I'm coming?
Yeah. Wait, is this the guy that David said to kill at the end of his life?
It's a different guy.
Okay.
It's a different guy. But yeah, okay. Yeah. So Mordecai, okay, and I'm saying that for a reason. Mordecai was born of a lineage of someone who spared from mercy. Verse 7, Mordecai had brought up Hadassah. That's her Hebrew name. That is Esther. His uncle's daughter. That's why you're thinking uncle, but it's actually his cousin. His uncle's daughter. For she had neither father nor mother. The young woman was lovely and beautiful, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So it was when the king's command and the decree were heard, that when many young women were gathered at Shushan the citadel under the custody of Haggai, that Esther was also taken to the king's palace into the care of Haggai, the custodian of the women. Now the young woman pleased him, and she obtained his favor, so he readily gave beauty preparations to her besides her allowance. Then 7 choice maidservants were provided for her from the king's palace, and he moved her and the maidservants to the best place in the house of women. So what it's saying is that Esther, the one guy who was the custodian, Haggai, he was the head eunuch who was the custodian of the women, liked her. She had favor. The Lord gave her favor with this guy. So he basically gave her the best place in the house. Gave her he basically gave her all the best stuff, and he's kind of setting her up. He's rooting for her. He wants her to win. He wants her to be the next queen. Now, it never says exactly why he liked her. He just kind of took a liking to her. She obviously has good character, and that's probably part of it. She's not only that she's beautiful. I'm sure all these women were beautiful. There had to be something else that set them apart besides just their beauty. So Esther had not revealed her people or family, for Mordecai had charged her not to reveal it. So Mordecai told her, don't tell anybody you're a Jew. That's basically what he said. Because remember, even though they are freed, how there's still in cultures, there still kind of remain discrimination. There still kind of remains kind of a little bit of like discrimination. A little I guess racism would be a proper term. Prejudice would be a better term. They're kind of still, because they had come out of, they were slaves at one point. And so, yeah, there was still some prejudice. So Esther had not revealed who she was. And every day Mordecai paced in front of the court of the women's quarters to learn of Esther's welfare and what was happening to her. Each young woman's turn came to go into King Ahasuerus after she had completed 12 months preparation according to the regulations for the women. For thus were the days of their preparation apportioned: 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with perfumes and preparations for beautifying women. I have no idea what that. I want to know.
Are you saying that they took a year to get pretty?
Yes. I have no idea what that means. I want to know, but I have no. Oil of myrrh? I'm really curious now. I mean, what does that do?
Well, I'm about to go buy me some myrrh.
I know, right?
Frankincense, I've heard, will tighten your skin. Like myrrh, I wonder if
Maybe?
frankincense and myrrh will
It's also teaching them court etiquette and manners. And
She's probably right. She's probably right. It's like charm school. I bet you it's like charm school.
Took all these women off the street, they're not going to know how to act.
Right. And how to, yeah, you're right. It's probably the same thing as etiquette and all the, yeah. Or it could be like a year-long spa treatment, spa day. That's what all the pictures looked like they were just at the spa day. But I'm sure it's probably a lot of etiquette stuff training too. What'd you say? Okay. Thus prepared, each young woman went to the king, and she was given whatever she desired to take with her from the women's quarters to the king's palace. In the evening she went, and in the morning she returned to the second house of the women, to the custody of Shashgaz, to the king's eunuch who kept the concubines. She would not go in to the king again unless the king delighted in her and called for her by name. So after spending the night with the king, she's no longer a virgin, she's a concubine. So now she's got to move to the other quarter.
Wait a second.
I'm letting that sink in for a second.
All these women are concubines now, so where's the wife? He hasn't picked one.
This is all, they all have their turn.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Whoa.
Okay.
I have a question.
That's a question.
How many women were there?
I don't know how many women
This was all one night?
No. One per night.
Year to prepare, and then they had one night, and then he said, "Bye, I'll never see you again until I call you."
Pretty
Sorry, I'm
much.
done.
That's pretty much. Now, however, I will.
Sorry.
I will say, though, that they had a life of luxury. Now, for what it's worth, I personally would not be okay with that. But for what it's worth, they lived in luxury for the rest of their lives.
You know, the king is lonely. He wants a wife, but he doesn't care if the concubines are lonely. Y'all be lonely.
You're right. I mean, I guess they probably had their own community thing going. I'm sure they had a whole sister wives.
No.
But that's what.
All their kids.
I mean, I would not be okay with that. So I guess we can, be grateful for what we have today. At least we're in a different time period. It's not all great, but at least it's not that, So
Crazy.
I know it is crazy. I was just letting that sink in for a second, but that's what happened. And they were allowed to bring whatever they wanted with them. So that kind of meant they were able to gussy up and dress up and you put jewels on, take whatever they wanted to be presented for their turn with the king. Sounds very bizarre, but that's
To catch his eye, look at what I have.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Remember me, to try to be impressive. Yeah.
They want to be queen.
They do. Now, when the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as daughter to go into the king, she requested nothing but what Haggai, the king's eunuch, the custodian of the woman, advised. Okay, so start taking notice now. Esther is being very respectful and obedient. One of Mordecai. She's done everything he's asked so far, and she's not revealed who she was or who her people are. And now she is taking note, and she's taking careful note of what this eunuch is telling her, and she's asking his advice because he should know, right? She doesn't know, It's like, what do you think? And so he basically tells her what he thinks that she should take, and that's what she takes. So I've seen a couple little clips from these movies, and it's he advises in the movie something a little simpler, something that's more sentimental and means something instead of something flamboyant, which is probably true. I really don't know. All we know is this. All right, where am I at?
Adorn themselves with all these piercings and you look at their art.
Yeah.
The women were head to toe decked out in jewels. And things, and that was considered beautiful. So she was
Right.
wearing
Yeah, and I'm sure the king, to him, that would be every day, but that's terrible to say it like that. This is just another beautiful woman, and I'm sorry.
That is how that is.
That's how it is, okay.
He decreed it.
He did. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all who saw her. Bless you. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she obtained grace and favor in the sight more than all the virgins. So he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast, the feast of Esther, for all his officials and servants, and he proclaimed a holiday in the provinces and gave gifts according to the generosity of the king. So she wins the big pageant and she becomes queen. When virgins were gathered together a second time, Mordecai sat within the king's gate. Now Esther had not revealed her family and her people, just as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther obeyed the command of Mordecai as when she was brought up by him. In those days when Mordecai sat within the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, doorkeepers, became furious and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. So the matter became known to Mordecai, who told Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king in Mordecai's name. And when an inquiry was made into the matter, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on the gallows, and it was written in the book of Chronicles in the presence of the king. Now, that little episode is recorded for a reason. It's going to come into play a little later in this story. So these two guys were mad at the king, and they have a plot to kill the king. Okay, and so Mordecai gets word of it because he's hanging around there close to the door. So he gets word of their plot to kill the king, and he informs Esther, who tells this, has said, hey, this guy Mordecai finds out, etc. It's recorded in the Chronicles. Now, when it says hanged on a gallows, it's actually impaled on a pole. This is the beginning. The Persians are, this is the beginning in history of what we known, what becomes crucifixion. So, and she's over here nodding, the historian, with me. She's brutal. It was brutal. And it was for the purpose of inciting fear to everyone. And it did incite fear because sometimes it would take days to die impaled on a pole. Ugh. And of course they did it in the worst way possible, like a skewer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No.
Do what?
Not appropriate for life.
Oh, okay. Not appropriate for life. The way they impaled them. They went up their nether regions to impale them. Yes. They went up, they impaled them from the nether regions. Yes. So, yeah. Yeah.
Like a pig get roasted kind of thing?
Yeah. From, yeah.
Through their shoulders?
Yeah, somewhere like that. Yeah. Came out through the,
off track, but they
yeah.
were often trying to aim for
Straight up and through. They did it with precision in order to leave them alive on purpose. Dodge the critical stuff so that they would be, hanging there, and so this gets adapted later on when the Greeks come along, and then the Romans. No picture. No, you're right. You're no picture. The Romans, after the Greeks come the Romans, and they perfect it by the time we get to Christ. Okay, so they're basically dreaming up better and better ways to make it the longest, most excruciating death. Blech. Okay.
The Persians was pretty quick because they're going through a bunch of organs, so then the Greeks
Yeah.
got really good at it on like X's.
Mhm.
They would hang people, and that's where you get where Christ was impaled through the hands and feet, and then tortured and hung to literally slowly die, and they'd leave you there for days until your body withered away.
Yeah. It was a horrible death.
I would really
Horrible
pieces
death.
on the history of crucifixion torture if you want to read it someday.
You would, wouldn't you? That's ridiculous.
I want to read that.
Okay. So anyway, so these two guys who had a plot to kill the king get impaled. All right, chapter 3. Is everybody good? After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman. Now here comes Haman. This is the villain of the story. The son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. And all the king's servants who were with the king's gate bowed, and paid homage to Haman, for so the king commanded concerning him. Haman, let me bottom line it and then I'll explain it. Haman is descendants of another guy, because remember Mordecai is descended from Shimei. Haman is descended from King Agag. King Agag was the one who Saul was commanded to kill, and he didn't. If anybody hasn't seen the yet on Prime, the story of David, the House of David, they did a great representation of this King Agag. It's so good, you guys. Yes, House of David. Watch it.
It's amazing.
Yes, it is really good. But they did a great representation of this guy. Okay. But who was Haman? So this is from 1 Samuel 15. So Samuel said to Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore heed the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel. Now he ambushed him on the way when he was coming out of Egypt. Now go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and do not spare them, but kill both man, woman, infant, and nursing child, ox and sheep, camel and donkey." That sounds like overkill. Trust me, there is a reason. There is a reason why this seems like overkill. It's because of the kinds of witchcraft and the kinds of things they were into. They were actually... There was, I'm trying not to bunny trail. Just take my word for it for now. So Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and lay wait in the valley. Then Saul said to the Kenites, "Go, depart, get down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them, for you showed kindness to all the children of Israel when they came up out of Egypt." So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites, and Saul attacked the Amalekites from Havilah all the way to Shur, which is east of Egypt. He also took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag, the best of the sheep, the oxen, the fatlings, the lambs, all that was good, and were unwilling to utterly destroy them. But everything despised and worthless they utterly destroyed. Now the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, "I greatly regret that I've set Saul up as king, for he's turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments." And it grieved Samuel, and he cried out to the Lord all night. When Samuel rose early in the morning to meet Saul, it was told Samuel, saying, "Saul went to Carmel, and indeed he set up a monument for himself, and he has gone on around, passed by, gone down to Gilgal." And then Samuel went to Saul, and Saul said to him, "Blessed are you of the Lord, for I have performed the commandment of the Lord." But Samuel said, "What then is the bleating of sheep in my ears and the lowing of oxen which I hear?" And Saul said, "They have been brought from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God. For the rest is utterly destroyed." So basically Saul is saying, "Oh, we saved the best to sacrifice for the Lord." So he's making an excuses and justifying what he knew he was doing. He was just trying to take spoils when he was commanded not to take spoils. So Haman is descendant from Agag. Now Samuel, if you know the story, Samuel comes along and kills Agag, but in the process, other descendants of Agag escape. So the villain of the story, Haman, the villain of Esther, is actually descended from a man who was spared out of an act of disobedience and rebellion and selfishness. You're starting to get two men. Mordecai descended from someone who's spared out of mercy. Haman is descended from a guy who was spared out of disobedience and rebellion. So here we have generations later, and we have this same thing playing out. So crazy. But God sees the future, and he's playing chess. He's playing the long game. Now, Haman is a very typical character of that exhibits all the traits the Lord says that he hates. Proverbs 6:16. These things the Lord hates. Excuse me. 7 are an abomination to him: a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running into evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren.
I almost put that in my sermon, but I didn't.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. Or like the, if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off, or your left eye, or
Yeah.
punch it out. If your foot, and like, well, it's not the tongue that lies. I almost put a whole deal in it.
Yeah. That's crazy. That is, it's one of those things that's not often quoted as like a very memorizable verse. Like it's not oft quoted as something that would be like encouraging that people talk about in scripture, but it is one that is important. I feel like it's important. That verse in Proverbs, that passage in Proverbs. We should probably memorize that. Yeah. So that describes Haman to a T. So here we go. The rest is verse 2. But Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. So there's a question. Now, why would Mordecai not bow? Everybody's bowing to Haman because that's what the king says. Mordecai would not bow. Can you guess why? He understands the history. All that stuff that I just laid out. Haman is he's an Amalekite. All of that history that the Lord said, this is forever the enemy of the Jews. Forever the enemy. So he understands the history of it because it's, okay, I'm going to say this with a soft edge. I'm not going to die on this hill, but I suspect that it was more to pay homage out of reverence. There's places where people bow that's not worship. There's places where people bow where it is worship. And there's places in scripture where people bow and it's just out of respect, like you do, to greet as a greeting to someone who's, of higher rank than you are. So there is a difference, but Mordecai would not bow. Now that could seem like, if you think about it, he ends up kind of causing a lot of problems. He's stirring up trouble because he wouldn't just, like Mordecai, just bow. What's the big deal? Just go along with the program. Why are you going to start trouble? Well, you could make a case for Daniel's friends not bowing to the. That was in worship. That was a god. So that would have been in the act of worship. So I suspect, like I said, I'm saying this softly. I don't think that this is an act of worship. This is literally just an act of paying homage. Ahasuerus, the king, Xerxes, he ordered that they should bow to Haman. Yeah.
Xerxes is considered like a god among men in Persian culture. It's very similar to like the Egyptian gods.
True.
God on earth.
True.
So,
Yeah. True. You're not wrong. So, but he's disobeying. This is an act of civil disobedience. There are places in scripture that are an act of civil disobedience that is considered right in the eyes of God. That's why I'm kind of laying it out. Does that make sense? It may seem to some people like, just go along. Like, why are you causing trouble, man? Just go along with it. Aren't we supposed to, we're supposed to obey authorities. Just go along with it. And I'm not making a case for anything in particular. I'm just saying there are times when it is honored by God to actually dissent from what everybody is doing. Does that make sense? That's all I'm saying. Mordecai dissents. He will not bow to an Amalekite because he considers an Amalekite an enemy of God. God, when he makes that decree back in Exodus, he says the Amalekites are an enemy of the Lord. It's not so much that he's an enemy of the Jews, they're an enemy of the Lord. So that's why he's making the distinction. Okay, makes sense? Yeah. Then the king's servants, who were not within the king's gate, said to Mordecai, "Why do you transgress the king's command?" Now it happened when they spoke to him daily that he would not listen to them, and they told it to Haman to see whether Mordecai's words would stand. For Mordecai had told them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, the dice, before Haman to determine the day and the month until it fell on the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. This is where they come up with the Purim, by the way. That is celebrated still today. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, "There is a certain people," so he doesn't even tell them. So Haman doesn't even tell them the exact specific people he's talking about. He's being vague. "There's a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all the other peoples, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore, it's not fitting for the king to let them remain. If it pleases the king, let a decree be written that they be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do not work to bring it into the king's who do the work to bring it into the king's treasuries." Now, you guys remember the whole episode where they are losing thousands and thousands of men in battle. That was actually a huge loss to them. And what he's offering is actually 2/3 of their entire income, the royal income for the year. So he's not only promising, like, there's all these people that their laws are different and they refuse to obey your laws, king. If you write a decree to destroy them all, basically he's saying he's going to get it from them. Like, he's going to just take the spoils and bring it into the king's treasuries. So he's making a sweet deal. He's giving him a sweet offering. You know, he's trying to make it tempting for him. So the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. And the king said to Haman, "The money and the people are given to you. Do with them as it seems good to you." Then the king's scribes were called on the 13th day of the first month, and a decree was written according to all Haman commanded. And the king's satraps and the governors who were over each province, to the officials of all the people, to every province according to its script, and to every people in their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus it was written and sealed in the king's signet ring. And the letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions. A copy of the document was to be issued as law in every province, being published by all the people, for all the people, that they should be ready for that day. The couriers went out, hastened by the king's command, and the decree was proclaimed in Shushan, the citadel. So the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was very perplexed. So he sends this edict out, and they didn't understand why. I mean, it just didn't make sense to anyone why suddenly he's declaring this. And by the way, this date that he cast lots to decide is almost a year out. So they have almost a year to prepare for this day.
The Jews too?
Yes, but they end up with almost a year to prepare for this day after her part in it. So yes. When Mordecai learned all that happened, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out in the midst of the city. He cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went as far as the front of the king's gate, for no one might enter the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province where the king's command and decree arrived, there was a great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Think about this scene, and if you were Mordecai, and you feel like all of this was basically because you wouldn't comply. You know, it's like because he refused to comply. This seems like a really huge, blowback from what seems like, why don't you just comply? What's the big deal? And now look, okay? So Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her, and the queen was deeply distressed. Then she sent garments to clothe Mordecai and take his sackcloth away from him, but he would not accept them. Then Esther called Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, who he had appointed to attend to her, and she gave him a command concerning Mordecai to learn what and why this was. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the city square that was in front of the king's gate, and Mordecai told him all that happened to him, and the sum of money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries to destroy all the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the written decree for their destruction, which was given at Shushan, that he might show it to Esther and explain it to her, that he might command to her to go up to the king to make supplication for him and plead before him for the people. So Hathach returned and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Then Esther spoke to Hathach, these names, y'all, and gave him a command to Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court of the king who's not been called, he has but one law: put all to death, except the one who the king holds out the golden scepter, that they may live. Yet I myself have not been called to go into the king these 30 days. So they told Mordecai Esther's words. So what she's saying is that, again, the Persian law that cannot be altered is that there's one law. If you just walk into the room, the inner court where the king is, they immediately strike you down. They immediately kill you, except if the king extends his scepter to you. Okay? So that's how they did it. You walk in uninvited, they strike you down.
Well, she's probably going to be killed anyway. So,
She's probably going to, yeah. They didn't know she was a Jew yet.
Right,
Yet. Right.
Yeah, I guess.
Yes. But this is that's exactly what Mordecai says. Where am I at? Scepter, yet I myself have not been called to go in these 30 days. So they told Mordecai's Esther's words. And Mordecai told them to answer Esther, do not think in your heart that you will escape the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. So that is the big verse that everyone that seems to be oft quoted. How do you know that you haven't come to this place at this time for such a time as this? So that's Mordecai's words to her. Exactly what you said, Mariah. So he is saying, don't think that you're going to be safe from this, is what he's telling her. If you don't act, God will raise up someone else to rescue us, but you and your father's house will perish. Man, God puts so much value on courage and faith in him. Because if you have faith in him, true faith in him, you have courage. The two go hand in hand. Faith bursts courage. If you believe God, if you believe that he will come through for you and he'll honor you because you're obeying him, you're walking in obedience, so he will come through for you in your time of need, then you will have courage. Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, "Go gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast for me. Neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise, and I will go to the king, which is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther commanded him. So that's as far as we're going to get tonight. That's setting the stage. Setting the stage.
Dang it.
I know, the cliffhanger. But it's a lot to sort of lay the background, right? The background of there's a lot going on. It's not just this story, but it's the history going all the way back to Genesis that's playing out in this story. Isn't that wild?
Like when you go through the history. I would have never known.
Yeah. And there's one other thing that I'll point out before we leave tonight is the fact that Mordecai and Saul were both Benjamites. So Mordecai and Saul were both Benjamites. And Saul blows it. This is one of the other patterns that happens a lot of times throughout Scripture with Jewish history. The first time they blow it, the second time they get it right.
Hey, wasn't David Benjamin?
No, David was from Judah.
No freaking way. I really thought this for a long time.
Well, the reason,
That's the lineage.
Jesus is in the tribe of Judah.
It's in the
Right.
lineage of Christ, yeah.
And he's in the
Christ
lineage
from
of
Judah.
Christ.
the reason, okay, hold on, I'm going to explain. The reason you got it mixed up is because David lived in the area of the Benjamites, and they were well known for being ambidextrous with the slingshots. Right. And being good fighters. So he probably grew up being around them, so he probably trained with them. So, no, well, like those daycare kids would remember. They won't remember.
No one listens to me anyway.
David's a Benjamite.
So that is something that, I mean, I like to point these patterns out because here's the thing. The big culmination of that pattern happens when Jesus comes incarnate as in the flesh. They reject him as Messiah. But when he comes the second time, it's because they will acknowledge him as one that looks on their only, one who's pierced and grieved like their only son. I botched that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They get it right the second time.
Terrible.
They blow it the first time, they'll get it right the second time. That's the culmination of this pattern that happens all through Scripture. Okay? All right. So hopefully that was good. It was a late start, but look, it's 8 o'clock. We got through it.
Yeah.
Good? Yay?
No.
Next week, I don't know if we'll finish next week or if I'll drag it out for 2 weeks. I don't know until I get into it. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Well, there's other things to draw. We'll see. We'll see. All right.
Hey.
Love.
He knows.
Love. Okay. Till next week. Goodbye.